Hello and welcome to Northwest Newsweek. Some residents in Nakina are upset after a decision by Greenstone Council. Programming at the Municipal Child Care Center will be moved to the local elementary school. The municipality says it's just following what other communities are doing in the province, but the residents feel it will limit the future and viability of Nakina. Adam Riley reports.
You know, it's very important that we have a space that is safe for the kids that's already developed.
A decision by Greenstone Council earlier this month to close the daycare facility in Nakina and move all programming over to the community's public school is being seen as short-sighted by residents. Mark Bell says childcare is going to be needed in the community, especially with several economic opportunities on the horizon, including the Nakina Mill, Greenstone Gold Mines, and the Ring of Fire.
We can have two-income households working here if we had services. But we feel that that this is, like we've been told, this is all about getting out of the daycare business. But then who's going to help these communities? You know, all our children matter. They all deserve to have a chance at early childhood development.
Bell says Nakina has lost a lot in recent years, including several businesses like the Northern Store, and the loss of services such as the daycare will hurt the community even more. But Greenstone Deputy Mayor James McPherson says a daycare hasn't operated for some time in Nakina, and the only thing moving to the school is the after-school programming. He adds communities across the province have been shifting away from providing childcare services, and Nakina isn't alone. Longlax Daycare has already moved into the Catholic school there, and more changes in the municipality are coming.
Here in Geraldton Ward, we're looking at moving the daycare into the high school and the elementary school, so it'll be primary education, secondary education, and daycare all in the same building, so that the youth will go to one building and work their way through the educational system that way.
A decision as to what will happen to the daycare building after its closure has yet to be made by council. Adam Riley, TBT News.
OPP and Greenstone are asking for assistance from the public after a break-and-enter in Longlac earlier this month. In the early morning hours of December 1st, 3 suspects broke into a warehouse at Pepco Fuels and stole $200 worth of fuel. They fled the scene in a dark-colored pickup truck. The investigation continues, and police are asking anyone with information to come forward. And parents across Ontario with children affected by autism were dealt with a devastating blow this week. Children's Minister Todd Smith announced that the Ford government's new autism program is going to take longer than expected to implement. Instead of being ready in April of 2020, parents may have to wait until 2021. Troy Charles has the story.
When he said 2021, it was a blow to the autism community.
Many parents had Tuesday's date circled on the calendar for quite some time, in hopes of getting the good news they've been so desperately needing. Unfortunately for them, that news did not come, and instead they were let down by the Ford government once again.
It's an emotional time. These parents have been waiting a long time. That's why we're taking the time to ensure that we get this right.
Sharon Back, the president of the Thunder Bay Family Network, says that time is something these families don't have. The first 5 years are the most crucial for children diagnosed with autism to get the therapy they need. Having the government's autism program pushed back to an undetermined date in 2021 will have major negative impacts on thousands of children across the province. Back says all the families want is for promises to be kept when their children's well-being is at stake.
What we want them to do, to be honest, is keep their promise. Work harder. Get this done by April 2020. We're going to be trying to hold their feet to the fire and say, keep your promises. You came to Thunder Bay, you came to Kenora, you came all across, did a listening tour, Minister Smith, and you told us that this would be ready. Don't make promises that you can't keep, because families were counting on that.
Premier Doug Ford also weighed in on the topic after the decision came down.
First of all, my heart breaks for families that are dealing with this, and I'm going to do everything I can to expedite it, but I want to make sure we do it properly.
Krista Smith has a 5-year-old son who is diagnosed with autism, and she is having a very hard time wrapping her head around the most recent development.
My son is almost 5. He doesn't talk. I don't understand how they could just rip away his future and not care.
For now, the government says they will phase in the program with no firm timelines on when parents can get funding for therapy. Troy Charles, TBT News.
2 people are in custody following a gas and dash in Terrace Bay Monday. Police later located the vehicle in a ditch near Pays Plat, where the suspects had fled into the nearby woods. Tactical and canine units were brought in to assist with the search. Both suspects were arrested, a 31-year-old male and 29-year-old female, both from Alberta. They're facing theft, flight from police, and firearms charges, and have also been remanded into custody. Well, the province of Ontario has announced details of its annual Winter Roads program. Northern Development and Mines and Indigenous Affairs Minister Greg Rickford says $5.8 million is being made available to provide funding to 31 First Nation communities and the town of Moosonee. That money will help fund over 3,100 kilometers of temporary winter roads. Describing them as an economic lifeline for far north communities, Rickford says the roads allow for delivery of essential services and goods such as food, medical, and construction supplies. The Winter Roads Network opens in mid-January and will remain in service until the spring thaw. Rampant mold problems on the Cat Lake First Nation made national headlines at the beginning of 2019, and now it seems the crisis is getting close to being resolved. Back in February, Ottawa pledged $12.8 million to address the housing shortage in Cat Lake and help with mold and health issues in the process. That money is being spent to build or ship in 15 new homes, 10 modulars, and a duplex, which should be ready for community members by February. Although a tendering process took nearly 3 months to get the job started, local leadership is excited to have a completion date. Councillor Derek Spence says that the housing is put into place. Residents are also being taught how to avoid this situation from rising again.
The hookups that need to be hooked up to the housing. Doing some training for the homeowners so that they can recognize these problems if they arise again. But we're hoping that with these new houses and then following codes and everything with the proper building codes and whatnot, so we're hoping not to face the same problem with these houses.
Residents say some houses are move-in ready, but waiting on Hydro One to hook them up to the grid. Hydro officials say because of the distance to the community, they have reached an agreement to bundle the 43 connections they're doing and hope to complete it as soon as possible. Dryden OPP have seized a huge haul of contraband cigarettes. It happened during a traffic stop Monday near Vermilion Bay. Officers discovered 111 cases of cigarettes in a vehicle with a total estimated value of $440,000. 2 men from Southern Ontario, both aged 41, have been charged with trafficking and contraband tobacco and possession of unmarked cigarettes for sale. The pair were released and will be back in court on January 27th. Well, it's been 2 weeks since the Auditor General released her annual report. It conducts financial audits and assessments of ministries and agencies, including court operations in the province. This section has the Rainy River District Law Association taking issue with the findings. The group says despite officials visiting the Fort Frances courthouse, the numbers presented in the report don't corroborate with what is really happening. Adam Riley has the story.
In her annual report, Ontario Auditor General Bonnie Lysyk found that courtrooms in the Northwest are used less than 5 hours per day. In Kenora, Dryden, and Thunder Bay, court facilities on average were utilized 2.7, 2.6, and 2.2 hours per day, respectively. However, in Fort Frances, that number dropped to 1.3 hours per day. Douglas Judson is the president of the Rainy River Law Association and says he has trouble understanding how Lysyk came to that conclusion, including the amount of courtrooms in the building. The report lists 3, which Judson disputes.
The building behind me, it's only got 2 and only one that's particularly hospitable. But I think the bigger issue is that if you want to look at all the numbers in that report, you need to ask yourself how what the interplay is between them and how the fact that we are the only district without a provincial judge factors into that analysis.
The region has been without a judge since 2012, forcing judges to travel to the community, which takes away from the amount of time they can sit in court. Judson says there has been some movement on the file, but no vacancy has been announced.
The constraint we face with that is that while the cabinet appoints the judicial office holders, the judiciary decides where the vacancies are announced and where they sit.
Judson, also a town councillor, questions the cost to time ratio. He says the town covers the cost of court security, which has increased from $126,000 in 2018 to $341,000 in 2019. To Judson, the numbers don't add up.
So how do you account for a difference in cost that's based on court officers having overtime, on having to be here longer because our dockets are taking longer to process, and then see figures at the other end that suggest our court isn't utilized? It doesn't make a lot of sense to us.
Going forward, Judson says he and other members of the Law Association intend to educate decision makers in the province on the needs of the court and the actual level of activity in the Rainy River District. Adam Riley, TBT News.
When we come back, a fire last month at the arena in Geraldton is still under investigation, but the cause is creating some concern for other municipal buildings. A fire late last month at the Geraldton Arena has forced residents to find alternative arrangements for ice time in the Greenstone area. As Adam Riley reports, the fire has caused the municipality itself to look at how vulnerable the infrastructure is in some municipal buildings and how to prevent the loss of further assets.
An electrical fire last month at the Geraldton Community Centre has shut down the facility, which houses both hockey and curling rinks for the rest of the season. Greenstone Deputy Mayor James McPherson says the timing couldn't be any worse.
It's horribly unfortunate. It was right at the start of the winter recreation season. We have many people using the facility, and so we're now having to find opportunities for them to enjoy their recreation in other facilities.
An investigation has determined the fire started in the boiler room area. McPherson adds this incident, paired with an electrical fire at the Geraldton Public Works garage in March, has also sparked a deeper investigation into the electrical systems of municipal buildings, which are all similarly aged.
We need to ensure that whatever has happened in that fire, if it's something that could happen in the other facilities, that we can deal with it. So once the investigation has been complete, we will then be working with the insurance group to begin the rehabilitation of the facility. Recognize again that it's an older building. Some of the parts may be hard to source.
McPherson says the fires and the reconstruction work that needs to be done is putting a strain on municipal resources, both from a financial and staffing perspective.
And then as far as the staff, municipal staff at both facilities needing to find alternate places to work from so that we can still provide services to people.
There is no timeline as to when things will get back to normal, but McPherson believes once all the buildings are assessed and the insurance company wraps its investigation, The municipality will have a better picture as to what will happen moving forward. Adam Riley, TBT News.
Highway closures are a year-round issue, but tend to be more common during the winter months. They can cause delays and leave travelers stranded on long stretches of highway. A recent incident forced the closure of Highway 17 between Shabakwa and Ignace for more than 24 hours. This forced travelers to either reroute through Atikokan using Highway 622 and Highway 11 or find accommodations. Ignace business owners Norm Price is proposing to build a shelter for travelers in part of his shop. He says between Dryden and Thunder Bay, there are few options should there be an incident.
So many people in distress on the highway that have either hit moose or had accidents, run out of gas, just fatigue from driving. And I have 2 full modular homes in behind the shop here that is attached to the shop that we're going to use to build like a lounge area where people can actually rest.
Price is also looking to install shower units, laundry facilities, and a small kitchen. So far, he's using a GoFundMe campaign to raise money for the shelter, but has also considered reaching out to the federal and provincial governments to fund the project. A Kenora area man was at the right place at the right time when he came across 3 deer stranded on a frozen lake. Ryan Peterson spotted the deer while he was skating on Lake of the Woods during a lunch break. He says he knew he had to act fast, so he went back to his work and grabbed some rope. He managed to tie the ropes around each of the deer and drag them all to the edge of the ice. They regained their balance and 2 of them ran away. The others stuck around with what appeared to be an injured hip. Newly elected Kenora MP Eric Malello has some new responsibilities in the House of Commons. Malello has been appointed to the role of Deputy Shadow Minister of Diversity, Inclusion and Youth, as well as the Deputy Shadow Minister of Fednor. In a statement, Malello says he looks forward to advocating for inclusion and equality of all Canadians and to fight for economic opportunities in Northern Ontario. It is the season of giving and helping the less fortunate, and when we come back, we'll have some stories on 2 initiatives which provide some holiday joy to residents of Ontario's far north. Many Canadians know all too well how expensive hockey equipment is, but but a new initiative is helping to ease that financial burden for Indigenous families, ensuring that cost isn't a barrier to playing Canada's game. 63 bags full of donated gear were turned over to the First Nation Hockey Equipment Drive. It originated in Barrie in 2015, but this is the first year donations have been collected here in Northwestern Ontario. Troy Charles has the story.
Graham McWaters, a local hockey dad from Richmond Hill, Ontario, started the first ever First Nations Hockey Equipment Drive back in 2015. That year, they gathered 8 hockey bags of equipment for donation. This year, they were able to fill 500. Of those 500, 63 bags made their way up to Thunder Bay for distribution to surrounding First Nations communities. On hand at the AMJ Campbell's warehouse were representatives from Lynx Clanwatch, Red Rock, Arrowland, and Yagmatum First Nations. Patrick Larocque, who works at CMHC in Indigenous Housing, is responsible for getting the 63 bags up to Thunder Bay and finding a home for them in Northwestern Ontario. He knows how important this equipment will be for all the recipients.
This is going to be a huge impact for the kids that didn't have an opportunity to play hockey before because the cost of the hockey gear was out of reach. So with this donation from all the groups involved, this will make this opportunity happen.
The equipment comes from various hockey associations in Southern Ontario, and this year, the Toronto Maple Leafs donated 200 bags of new equipment. The Ottawa Senators and their foundation were also involved with donations. Lauren Michelle from Red Rock Indian Band is excited to get the gear back to all the hockey players on the reserve.
Pretty much all of our kids on the reserve play hockey, so it's actually really good. It's beneficial for everybody, especially for a single parent as myself. Buying hockey equipment is not cheap and that, so we always have hand-me-downs to people who need them in that, so it's really good. I'm very grateful for this.
If hockey wants to be considered Canada's game, then giving kids in First Nations communities the opportunity to play is a step in the right direction. Troy Charles, TBT News.
And Christmas has come early for young ones in 2 First Nation communities as the RCMP held its annual Toys for the North campaign. The fly-in reserves of Cat Lake and Sajago Lake were recipients of nearly 3,000 gifts for community kids. They also enjoyed a visit from the Jolly Man in Red. Corey Nordstrom has the story.
I think it's very important that we're able to bring some toys, bring some joy to some of the communities far away from the bigger centers.
Merry Christmas! Merry Christmas, Cat Lake!
Cat Lake's 2 schools were the first stops of the Toys for the North campaign, where children from each grade had the chance to meet Santa Claus and have a holiday photo taken.
It means more because we are in a flying community, you can easily drive, so you bringing Santa to us makes more sense to them.
Retired RCMP Staff Sergeant Norman Roy has been helping the campaign for more than 6 years. He says while people love the holiday elements, seeing a Mountie in the red surge uniform visit their community is also special for locals.
So they have an opportunity to see us here in their home place versus on TV, etc. And so just that having our presence and bringing Santa Claus and our group, it just shows them that we care.
Cat Lake leadership decided to save their share of the gifts for a community gathering on Christmas Eve, but it did require some extra help to bring in the presents largely donated from the Canadian Toy Association. This cargo aircraft behind me was brought in from Thompson, Manitoba to ship in the over 6,000 pounds worth of gifts for the Toys for the North campaign. With an abundance of items collected, toys will not only go to Sachago Lake and Cat Lake, but Martin Falls, Tikanagan, and Dalico. A Sachago Lake kindergarten class gave Santa and his group of volunteers a special welcome to their community. And once the toys began arriving, the focus shifted to the stage once again, as Chris Kringle made sure every boy and girl got a present.
Everyone's so great, everyone's excited. Everybody just loves it here. We're having a great time. Everyone's in the Christmas spirit right now. They're all having fun, kids are playing.
Roy says there may be plans to expand the Toys for the North campaign in the future. Corey Nordstrom, TBT News.
The The holiday season has yet another kind gesture from a Thunder Bay business. Badani Motors has repaired the mobile unit used by Elevate NWO and done so free of charge. In late November, Elevate officials set up a GoFundMe for their beloved former ambulance, nicknamed Ellie, which is used for harm reduction programs and was badly in need of repair. The campaign had managed to raise just over $2,500 of the agency's $5,000 goal, and that's where George Badani stepped in.
Ago, I was reading TBA News Watch, as I do every morning, and I saw the story about the need for Ellie and a GoFundMe to repair their vehicle for the services that they provide for aides in Thunder Bay. And I noticed it was a Chevrolet product. I spoke to my wife, Kelly. I said, there's a nice gift that we can give to the community. I thought it was a good thing to support.
Thunder Bay's always been a really warm, welcoming, helpful, giving community. That's really the heart of Thunder Bay.
The nearly $3,000 in repairs were completely covered by Badani Motors. Now, the money raised from the GoFundMe campaign can be used for other services that Elevate provides for people living with or at risk of HIV, AIDS, and hepatitis C in Thunder Bay and Northwestern Ontario. And that will do it for this edition of Northwest News Week. But before we go, we just want to let you know what's happening over the next couple of weeks. We'll be airing 3 year-in-review episodes covering the top stories of 2019. Then we'll be back with brand new episodes starting in January. Thanks for watching.